A sharp bark pierced the suffocating silence of the courtroom. All eyes turned to Ethan Caldwell, a former Marine veteran in a wheelchair, and Bravo, the German shepherd with unwavering eyes locked onto the witness stand. Ethan stood accused as a criminal. Bravo was labeled a living weapon. But what had driven a war hero and his loyal companion into the eye of the storm? Could a dog reveal a truth the world refused to see? This is a story of loyalty, of sacrifice, and of a moment when justice is defined not by words, but by action. Before we begin, make sure to hit subscribe and tap the notification bell so you never miss another inspiring story about veterans and their four-legged friends, where every paw print tells a tale. Ethan Caldwell, 37 years old, stepped out of the hospital room. His frail frame and faint, strained smile were shadowed by eyes so dark and sunken they seemed to carry the weight of too many painful stories. Just a few months earlier, he was still a Marine Corps sergeant, a brilliant leader, calm and decisive under gunfire in the desert storms of Afghanistan. He and Bravo, a sleek German shepherd with glossy black and tan fur, had become an unbreakable team. With just a glance or a subtle hand signal, Bravo would understand and sniff out bombs buried beneath the fine sand. Thanks to that bond, they had saved dozens of fellow soldiers, pulling them from danger in the blink of an eye. But war, in all its boundless cruelty, spares no one. During a routine patrol outside Kandahar, as Ethan and Bravo advanced to search for threats, a secondary device, a hidden bomb, exploded beside them. The blast wave hurled Ethan violently, his spine shattered, his vocal cords severely damaged. Bravo, his eye pierced by shrapnel and one leg nearly paralyzed, still crawled toward his handler, whimpering through the thick haze of smoke and dust. They were evacuated by their unit and rushed to base for emergency treatment. But the physical injuries were only the beginning of a long, uncertain road ahead. Back in America, Ethan faced a brutal new reality. The lower half of his body nearly motionless, his voice hoarse, as though the wind had left him forever, and a future he had never imagined he'd have to live. Doctors invited him quietly into a counseling room, handing him 2 words: a new life, one bound to a wheelchair, to physical therapy, and to endless recovery sessions that seemed to stretch without end. In his mind, one image never faded: Bravo, curled and bleeding, still mustering the strength to crawl to his side in the operating room. And with that, an unshakable truth. No matter what happened, the two of them, man and dog, belonged together. Ethan's spirit refused to surrender. He was determined to bring Bravo home, even though the military had retired the dog due to injuries that made further service impossible. Adopting a former service dog wasn't easy. Stacks of paperwork, appeals to higher authorities, more documentation. Ethan had to write letters, explaining their bond over the years, and the state of his life now. Some nights, he sat before the mountain of forms, his mind spinning, but just thinking of Bravo's waiting eyes, he'd quietly pick up the pen and keep going. Finally, after nearly 3 months of persistence, Ethan held the approval papers in his hands. On the first day he drove his old pickup truck to bring Bravo home, his heart pounded. The dog stuck his head out the window, ears fluttering in confusion, until suddenly he recognized the familiar face behind the wheel. Bravo lunged forward, circling Ethan as if to say, "You're still here, and I'm still yours." Tears had to fall, and they both cried, not from pain, but from the overwhelming joy of being reunited. The small apartment in the suburbs of Pittsburgh wasn't fancy, but it overflowed with memories. Neighbors peeked through windows, watching Bravo limp slowly, dragging one leg, always pausing to wait for Ethan. He installed ramps for the wheelchair. Bravo had a special bed right next to his own. Each morning, as sunlight filtered through the blinds and the blanket still held warmth, Bravo would lift his head and wag his tail. Ethan would sit up slowly, place his hand on Bravo's head, and whisper, "We move forward together, old friend." Physical therapy became both fear and hope. Each day, Ethan had to stretch stiff joints, endure pain shooting from his spine to his legs. Bravo was taken to a recovery center where veterinarians used laser therapy for his eye and limb. Ethan sat outside, watching Bravo stumble forward, then suddenly threw his head back and laughed. "Slow and steady, Bravo. But we've got this." The squeaky hum of the wheelchair, paired with the uneven rhythm of a limping paw, together they created a quiet symphony of resilience, a refusal to be defeated. On weekends, Ethan and Bravo joined a veteran support group. Soldiers with wounds, seen and unseen, gathered in a modest hall. Ethan shared his story about the loyal service dog, about the secondary blast that stole his freedom, and about the rescue that came full circle, saving himself by caring for Bravo. Eyes filled with tears. Hands reached out to his. And through every grip and every nod, one message echoed loud and clear: we are not alone. Entering a new chapter, Ethan began relearning how to speak, one syllable at a time. His damaged vocal cords required speech therapy, a place where he learned to control his lips, tongue, and breath to form clear sounds. Bravo became his unlikely instructor. Whenever Ethan mispronounced a word, the dog would look up, tilt his head, as if he understood the effort, urging Ethan to try again. Their unique bond grew even stronger. A man learning to speak again, a dog learning to trust, fully and without hesitation. Each afternoon, they strolled through the neighborhood park. Bravo walked slowly, his nose twitching through the scent of freshly cut grass, while Ethan rolled beside him in his wheelchair, watching the golden sunset spill across the treetops. Sometimes they said nothing at all. Just two souls soaking in the peace of nature after years of bombs, bullets, and pain. The wind whispered through the leaves as if to say, "Keep going. Life still stretches far ahead." Social media posts documenting their journey drew thousands of likes and heartfelt comments. People reached out, fellow veterans, individuals living with disabilities, sharing their stories and finding inspiration in the bond between man and dog, overcoming trauma together. Ethan replied to every message, often with photos of Bravo in his tiny protective vest, ears wrapped in soft bandages, eyes still burning with purpose, no longer dreaming of distant battlefields. Ethan found his mission in spreading hope. He partnered with a volunteer group to launch Four-Legged Friend Day, an event where veterans and service dogs could gather, connect, and rediscover a path back into the community. Bravo walked proudly, his stride confident, as if declaring to the world, "Believe in friendship. No matter the circumstance, we can rise from the ashes." Now, each morning, Ethan wakes to find Bravo curled by the window, tail wagging gently, as if to say, "Today, we fight again, for life." Not against an unseen enemy in the desert, but against pain, against the fragility of a broken body, against the weight of memory and for the hope of what lies ahead. Two wounded souls, their shattered pieces slowly stitched together by perseverance, determination, and a love that asked for nothing in return. And so, the story of Ethan and Bravo continues, a living reminder that no matter how hard life knocks you down, there is always hope to rise, to move forward, and to find new meaning, alongside the most loyal friend you'll ever have, even if they're not human. In a tiny apartment tucked beneath rustling trees, Ethan Caldwell and Bravo began their days of relearning how to live. Morning sunlight streamed through the thin curtains, casting warm streaks across the wooden floor, as if encouraging two souls struggling to rebuild themselves after the brutality of war. The space was humble, a single room serving as both living and sleeping quarters, a mini kitchen and a cramped bathroom. Yet every inch carried Ethan's determination. Handmade wheelchair ramps, custom-built support bars for bed-to-chair transfers, and soft rugs placed strategically so Bravo wouldn't slip while moving around. Each morning began with physical therapy. Ethan lay on the bed, practicing hip bends, tightening thigh muscles, while Bravo served as his assistant, placing his front paws gently on Ethan's legs, leaning forward as if helping his handler prepare for the next set. Bravo, too, had his own routines, learning to flex his injured hind leg, enduring sharp pain in his eye and the lingering trauma of old wounds. Yet, after every session, he would wag his tail, proud somehow of a mission completed. The air was quiet, heavy with resolve. Only the faint clicks of joints and the slow, steady breaths of two teammates filled the room. Alongside physical recovery, Ethan worked to regain his voice. Speech therapy began with the simplest sounds. A, E. He stared into a mirror, lips trembling around each syllable, coaxing his vocal cords like a paralyzed muscle desperate to move again. Bravo sat close, head tilted, listening intently, his shimmering eyes full of reassurance, as if he knew each broken sound held both sweat and hope. Together, they developed a silent language. A thumb tapped gently on the arm, two fingers pressed together, or just a steady, trusting gaze. Those small signals quickly became commands and replies. Bravo would spring forward, nose twitching to find the requested item, then bow his head softly as if to say, "Don't worry, I've got you." Outside their little home, life in suburban Pittsburgh moved to a calm, steady rhythm. But Ethan didn't retreat into solitude. Whenever the weather allowed, he and Bravo wheeled over to the neighbors. Beneath golden twilight, Ethan bent low to repair a shaky wooden fence, drilling, sawing, screwing, all with tools he had taught himself to use through online tutorials. Bravo stood nearby, occasionally snorting, as if inspecting the progress. When the fence was done, Ethan collected old shoes, a worn-out Adidas with a torn toe, a cracked heel Nike, soaked them in soapy water, scrubbed them clean, then left them on the street corner for someone homeless. On weekend afternoons, the small park down the street turned into an impromptu bicycle repair class. Neighborhood kids came running with wobbly bikes that groaned clank-clank with every pedal, seeking help from Dr. Ethan. He lowered bike stands, removed wheels, tightened hubs, adjusted brakes, then handed each child their freshly tuned bike for a test ride. Bravo curled up beneath a nearby tree, eyes half closed, but ever alert, ready to rise if someone needed help. Their quiet teamwork became its own short film, a story of resilience, trust, and the will to live again. But fate, as always, had more in store. One drizzly afternoon, just as they returned to the apartment, the piercing sound of a nearby ambulance tore through the air. Ethan turned his wheelchair slowly, instinctively nudging Bravo into a safe corner. The dog sensed the tension instantly. Hackles raised, ears up, eyes focused. Neighbors rushed outside, whispering about a car accident just down the street. A vehicle had lost control, reversed wildly, and crashed straight into the building across the road. Headlights flickered, glass shattered, bricks scattered across the pavement. Ethan could feel Bravo's anxiety rise. A low whine escaped as the dog lifted a paw, then nudged the side of the wheelchair with his nose. A signal. Stay alert. Ethan steadied himself. It wasn't their emergency. No danger, just a hard crash that had flung a neighbor onto their couch. But in that moment, Ethan knew. He could no longer dash into chaos to rescue others as he once did. All he could do now was calm. Bravo, call 911, and report what he saw, that no one appeared to be trapped outside their home. As the dispatcher gave instructions, Bravo's tense body slowly relaxed, trusting that things were under control. The incident passed quickly, but left Ethan heavy with reflection. Disaster, he realized, could strike at any moment, even without war. He turned away from the rain, pushing his chair back toward the apartment. Bravo followed closely, two quiet souls carrying the fragile weight of life. Once inside, Ethan raised his arm, gently stroked Bravo's sleek fur, and whispered, "We always have to be ready." The dog looked up, his eyes gleaming with silent determination. From that day forward, their routine changed. Each night, alongside physical and speech therapy, Ethan added a new element: safety reflex training. He set up a miniature street intersection in the apartment, practiced turning his wheelchair swiftly, gripped the rims firmly, and gave slight jolts to simulate sudden shocks. Bravo stood beside him, observing closely, occasionally placing a paw on the model to add weight and challenge the drill. They had turned their modest apartment into a miniature training ground, proving that even off the battlefield, survival skills still needed sharpening. Outside their walls, the local veteran community and volunteers began to recognize them, thanks to social media. Ethan launched a small blog, posting videos titled Survival Toolkit, clips of their training routines, fence repairs, and moments where they delivered cleaned shoes to those in need. Each post garnered hundreds of shares and heartfelt comments. One read, "Bravo is so brave, and Ethan, incredibly strong." Some parents sent broken bicycles to be fixed by Dr. Shortlegs Bravo and Dr. Busted Arms Ethan. Their story became a warm torch, lighting up hope and belief in a friendship that defied every limit. And then, on a day not far off, a new challenge knocked. A brutal winter storm was on its way, promising freezing winds and howling blizzards. Ethan was no longer the sergeant in the desert, but the instincts of combat still burned quietly in his heart. He and Bravo prepared to fortify their tiny home, checking the locks on the metal door, tying down the curtains, stocking up on food and medication. The once military working dog and the half-paralyzed man were about to face nature's wrath, not for their country this time, but to protect the fragile little haven they called their own. In Ethan's heart, though the guns had silenced and the bombs were long gone, the trials had never truly ceased. And Bravo, with those steady, unwavering eyes, would always be ready, right beside his old friend, facing every storm with a courage that never faded. On a dim, moonless night, The quiet streets of Pittsburgh lay blanketed in silence. The city slept heavily, wrapped in stillness, broken only by the soft rustle of wind against the window pane and the steady breathing of Bravo in the living room. Suddenly, the trained service dog jolted upright, body tense, taut like a drawn bow. His ears stood erect, his hackles rose, his eyes locked intensely on the window. Bravo didn't bark wildly. Instead, he let out a long, low growl, a signal Ethan recognized immediately. Something was wrong. Ethan Caldwell, stirring from the recliner near his desk, reached quickly to disable the sleep mode on the hallway security camera. The small monitor lit up, shadows flickered under the dim glow of a street lamp, a faint figure dragging a small, limp form across the tiled courtyard. Ethan's heartbeat raced. His fingers trembled as he zoomed in on the image. It was the new neighbor, a tall man, bundled in a thick coat, half his face hidden in shadow. He was pulling a small boy, maybe no older than 6, into the dark corridor of the building. The boy stumbled, barefoot and disoriented, letting out faint sobs caught in his throat. Bravo stepped back, then lunged forward, bracing his front paws on the window ledge, eyes flaring with fury. The man didn't stop. He tugged the child harder. Then, smack! A loud slap cut through the still night air. The sound, sharp and cruel, squeezed Ethan's chest. Another slap. The fire inside him surged, his breath hitched. Without hesitation, Ethan dialed 911. His voice quivered with both fear and fury. "I'm witnessing a child being assaulted right outside my door." There was a pause on the other end. Then, calmly, the dispatcher replied, "Sir, please provide clearer video evidence. Your camera shows only shadows. We can't confirm abuse from this footage." Ethan went silent for a moment, then choked out, "Please, just send someone." The line disconnected. Ethan sat frozen in the dark. Bravo remained by the window, his eyes glued to the screen, urging Ethan to act. But knowing the police needed legal grounds, all Ethan could do was wait. That night, he left the lights on, pacing between the desk and the window, scanning every flicker of movement outside. The boy's sobs, though distant, echoed in Ethan's mind, haunting and suffocating. As dawn's pale light crept through the trees, Ethan sat with the camera remote still in hand, eyes bloodshot from a sleepless night. Then, a soft knock at the door. He pulled back, heart thudding. Bravo gave a cautious bark, eyes locked in attention. Ethan tapped the indoor cam, and what he saw made his throat tighten. A small boy stood there, thin, frail, barefoot on chipped tile, one cheek swollen, with a dark red mark that told no lies. His left arm near the elbow bruised deeply, like something sharp had been driven in. His eyes, wide, confused, terrified. Ethan opened the door slowly. The boy slipped in, and immediately ran into Ethan's chest, clutching tightly, as if holding on to the only warmth left in a storm of fear. Ethan crumpled around him, his hands shaking as he wrapped a thin blanket over the child's small shoulders. Bravo crawled over, laid down gently beside them, and reached out one paw to touch the boy's arm, his tail wagging softly in quiet comfort. No words were spoken, only 3 urgent, shaky breaths, shared between 2 humans and 1 loyal soul. Once the boy had calmed, Ethan reached for his phone and called Child Protection Services. His voice, though steadier now, still trembled with resolve. "Hello? I need to report a suspected case of child abuse. I'm at 24A and there's a young boy, about 6 years old, right outside my door. I believe his stepfather heard him." The voice on the line confirmed they would send someone within the hour. While waiting, Ethan made a small cup of tea, warm, with a touch of honey. The boy didn't drink. He only looked up, eyes searching Ethan's face, silently asking, "What's happening to me?" Ethan sat beside him, gently patting his back, and whispered, "It's going to be okay. I'm here. You're not alone." Bravo nestled between them, head resting on Ethan's lap, eyes half closed, but still ready to rise if danger returned. Now, the little apartment felt warmer than ever before. The doorbell rang. Hurried footsteps echoed in the hallway. 2 social workers and a local police officer appeared. The officer's face stern, but his eyes carried a quiet sympathy. They looked at the boy, then turned to Ethan and Bravo. After a few questions, the child was gently escorted to a specialized vehicle, while Ethan was asked to remain as a witness. Just before leaving, the boy glanced back over his shoulder. His eyes blinked once, then lit up with a faint smile. It was the smile of a soul rediscovering trust. That afternoon, with the sun rising high, Ethan brought Bravo out onto the balcony. They gazed at the row of green trees lining the quiet street. Sunlight filtered through the leaves, scattering glimmers of gold across the aging dog's face. Ethan exhaled, slowly running his hand over Bravo's head, whispering to himself that life may be full of danger, but it also holds deep reservoirs of kindness. Bravo was living proof of loyalty and courage. And that boy, he was the reason Ethan would keep fighting. Not against invisible enemies this time, but against injustice standing in plain sight. The following night, as darkness fell once more, Ethan checked the security cameras, ensuring every corner was covered, no shadows left unchecked. Bravo lay curled in the armchair, eyes closed, but ears still twitching, alert and ready. Ethan sat beside him, turned on a small lamp, read a few pages from a worn book, and pressed his hand to the screen, recording the stillness of peace. Outside, the wind slipped through the window cracks, but inside, something new had been lit in Ethan's heart. A fire to protect. A fire of hope. A fire of compassion, burning for the broken and the brave. The story of Ethan Caldwell and Bravo is far from over. They had already risen above war's destruction, and now they continued the fight in civilian life, where cruelty can hide in any hallway, any home. But no matter what they faced, they remained a team. One broken man who refused to surrender and one four-legged warrior always ready to guard the lonely. Pittsburgh might sleep in silence, but their hearts would never stop speaking. Just hours after the social workers and police had left, the tiny apartment suddenly turned darker than ever before. The front door slammed open, crashing into the wall and rebounding violently. Michael Turner, the boy's father, appeared in the doorway, face flushed red with rage, veins bulging on his forehead, his eyes wild with fury. His once polished suit was crumpled, his shirt soaked in sweat, the very image of a man consumed by wrath. He roared, "You stole my son!" His voice thundered down the narrow hallway, vibrating through the apartment walls. Ethan Caldwell, still exhausted from a sleepless night, instinctively turned his wheelchair toward the door, trying to block the way. Every movement was deliberate, though slow. The wheels clicked and creaked against the wooden floor. His eyes stayed firm, filled with resolve. He knew he had done the right thing, but he also didn't want a fight. Turner smirked and raised his fist, ready to strike, ready to end it quickly. The small room seemed to shrink. Ethan's heartbeat pounded in his ears. Suddenly, Bravo launched from the corner of the living room. His black and brown fur bristled, eyes flashing with the instinct of a warrior who'd faced danger before. His bark shattered the air, bouncing off every wall, forcing Turner back a step. Before Turner could react, Bravo's sharp white teeth grazed his wrist, not drawing blood, not tearing skin, but biting down just hard enough to shake him, to send a warning. "Ah!" Turner shouted, stumbling back, just as the sound of a door unlocking echoed from the hallway. Someone else was coming. Within seconds, 2 social workers and a security officer burst in. They quickly stepped between the parties, gently pulling Bravo away while keeping a safe distance from Turner. Breathing heavily, his eyes still burning with rage, Turner could no longer advance. The officer's voice was calm but firm. "Mr. Turner, please, remain calm. We're here to ensure everyone's safety." Turner clenched his jaw, his glare unyielding, then turned and stormed out without another word. But just a few hours later, Ethan's life was once again thrown into chaos. This time, by the weight of the law. Turner filed a lawsuit, accusing Ethan of kidnapping his son, trespassing on private property, and using Bravo to attack him in an inhumane manner. The complaint, thick and harsh, landed squarely on the desk of the Allegheny County court clerk, and suddenly, Ethan and Bravo became the focus of a tense and polarizing case. Local media pounced. Headlines blared, "Unstable veteran sets service dog on child's father. Trained dog terrorizes quiet Pittsburgh neighborhood." The public response was swift and divided. Neighbors who once stood by Ethan began to hesitate. Some newspapers called him a hero, a man brave enough to protect a child from harm. Others published cautionary pieces warning military dogs in civilian hands could pose a serious threat. Online forums and HOA meetings split into 2 clear camps. Supporters insisted Ethan had followed his conscience, protecting a vulnerable child. Critics argued no private citizen had the right to interfere, and certainly not to unleash a trained military animal. Ethan didn't rush to the media. He didn't spin stories or hire lawyers to flood the airwaves. He waited, silently, for the next move from the court. Each night, Bravo curled into his small bed near the window, occasionally lifting one eyelid to watch Ethan as he studied the mounting legal documents. The dense pages made Ethan's eyes ache, but he pressed on. He knew Turner wasn't just acting out of rage. He was trying to reclaim control within a legal system Ethan once swore to defend. The following day, Ethan met with his lawyer, a fellow veteran, a friend from the service. Together, they examined the charges. Kidnapping? Inaccurate. The boy had come to Ethan on his own in distress. Trespassing? Technically, Ethan had let the boy inside, but it was supported by a signed report from social services, confirming it was the right call. Using Bravo to attack? Utterly unfounded. The dog acted instinctively, in self-defense, to prevent harm. Still, disproving each point would not be easy. Every argument needed proof. Fortunately, Ethan had uploaded the security footage, clean segments showing exactly what had happened. While waiting for the court date, Ethan didn't retreat into bitterness or fear. He continued his quiet routine, fixing fences, repairing kids' bikes, donating old shoes to the homeless, all captured in his blog, The Journey with Bravo. He wrote openly about child abuse and the importance of stepping in before it's too late. Thousands read, watched, and reached out. Many sent messages of support and admiration. "You're braver than most of us. Thank you for standing up for the voiceless." Amid the turmoil, Bravo himself became the center of public attention. Questions echoed across social media and news outlets. Should a military-trained dog be involved in civilian incidents? Some animal rights groups immediately criticized the idea of training dogs for tasks like reclaiming property or restraining humans. Ethan, calmly and respectfully, responded on his blog. Bravo is not a tool. He is not a weapon. He is the one companion who understood me after the bombs stopped falling. What Bravo did was not aggression. It was instinct, sparked by a threat to a child's life. That message was met with hundreds of likes and supportive comments. On the day of the preliminary hearing, the halls of the Allegheny County Courthouse echoed with hurried footsteps. Ethan entered in a simple dark suit. Bravo sat quietly beneath the gallery bench, a thin leash still clipped to his collar. Their eyes met those of both supporters and skeptics alike. Earlier, Turner had arrived with a full legal team, his expression cold as ice. The two men exchanged no words, but in their silence, one truth was clear. This fight hadn't ended in the hallway. It was just beginning inside the courtroom, in the form of arguments, evidence, and sworn testimony. Before the judge, Ethan's lawyer presented one piece of footage after another, clips showing the alleged abuse, the child's distress, and Bravo's defensive reaction, all backed by signed statements from social workers and police. Expert witnesses testified on the nature of justified defense, whether human or animal, and underscored the moral and legal duty to protect a child in imminent danger. Bravo lay silently on the floor, ears perked, eyes following every word spoken. A few days later, the judge issued a continuance. The court needed more time to review the files. That night, back in the quiet apartment, Ethan sat at his desk, switched on the small lamp, and gently stroked Bravo's head. He whispered, "We did the right thing, Bravo. We just have to wait a little longer." Bravo let out a soft whine and licked Ethan's fingers. His way of saying, "I'm still right here." The legal battle wasn't over, but Ethan Caldwell and Bravo had already shown the world what courage and loyalty look like. Even when faced with the weight of public opinion, harsh headlines, and a complex legal system, they stood tall, because they believed truth would prevail. And that belief became a powerful testament to the unyielding spirit of a soldier returned from war, a man who no longer carried a rifle, but who still rose to defend justice and protect the vulnerable. The courtroom was suffocatingly silent. Only the soft rustle of papers and the faint creak of shoes echoed against the polished wood floor. A pale, sterile light spilled across the tense faces of everyone present. The judge presiding from the bench above, the prosecutor seated to the right in a dark robe, and the defense positioned on the left. In the audience gallery, the court staff's eyes sparkled, watching every subtle movement. Bravo lay still beside Ethan, his head tilted slightly, ears taut, as if listening to the heartbeat of the man across the room. The prosecutor stood, his voice sharp and cutting, like a blade slicing through the air. "This trial is not a celebration of medals or heroic service. This is about a man, a former soldier, who chose violence over the law." No one responded. The silence was so thick, his words seemed to hang frozen in the air. The prosecutor placed a hand on the table, signaling he was ready to launch each argument like a needle's point. On the witness stand stood Michael Turner, the boy's father. He puffed out his chest, confidence etched in his posture. The courtroom lights flushed his face red, casting shadows into the creases around his mouth as he began. "I was heading home when I saw him, barging into my courtyard, unannounced. And that dog," he turned toward Bravo, "attacked me, out of nowhere, right in front of everyone." Turner's calm tone masked calculation, rehearsed, deliberate. He paused, took a deep breath, then continued in a commanding voice. I only pushed him away from the door. And then Bravo lunged and bit me. Bravo didn't move, but his ears flicked every time Turner emphasized unprovoked or violent. The dog's dark eyes gleamed, alert and watchful. Each hair on his back bristled, silent proof that he would not let a lie go unchallenged. Below, Ethan sat upright in his wheelchair, hands calmly resting on the arms, his gaze steady. He furrowed his brow slightly as Turner twisted the truth about that night. But Ethan waited. His moment would come. The judge tapped the gavel lightly against the wooden desk, signaling the prosecution to pause. His voice was steady, deep. The prosecution has made its case. Defense. You may proceed. All eyes shifted to Ethan's table. His lawyer, a fellow veteran, nodded and leaned in to exchange a few quiet words. Bravo lifted his head slightly to meet the lawyer's eyes, as if he understood the strategy. The lawyer stood. Your Honor, he said, we request to present visual evidence from the defendant's home security footage. The screen behind the witness stand flickered on. The room went still. On camera, Turner dragging the boy down the hallway. Moments later, Turner feigning injury, shielding his neck to make a fabricated wound appear real. Whispers rippled through the room. Turner's brow tightened, jaw clenching. But he had no space to refute it. The video continued. Ethan's 911 call, his desperate plea for help, his report of suspected child abuse. When the footage stopped, the judge tapped his gavel again. Visual evidence has been presented. Prosecution, your response? The prosecutor frowned, but tried to maintain composure. The footage is inconclusive. There is no direct angle showing the alleged attack. It remains insufficient to confirm the defendant's use of force. The judge made a note, then looked directly at Bravo. The lighting gleamed against the dog's sleek fur. The room fell into absolute stillness. Bravo remained still, ears twitching slightly, waiting. Ethan glanced at him and offered a calm, reassuring gaze. Then, as if on cue, Bravo stood. He inhaled through his nose and slowly began walking toward Turner. Each step echoed. Each paw struck the floor with unshaken purpose. No one stopped him. The action had been pre-cleared by the defense as part of the evidence demonstration. Bravo didn't growl, but his footsteps filled the air with tension. As he neared Turner, Bravo lowered his head and barked, loud and fierce. Turner flinched. His shoulders recoiled in shock. And then, Bravo raised one front paw, gently tugged at the hem of Turner's shirt. It was a trained maneuver, harmless, but commanding. The shirt lifted just enough to reveal a small, green dinosaur keychain, its tail coated in a thick layer of black adhesive. The courtroom gasped. The judge raised his eyes. Bring it forward for immediate testing. A court officer stepped in, collected the object, and placed it in front of the bench. Turner recoiled, trying to pull the shirt down, but it was too late. The keychain and the black substance were out in the open. It was rushed off for testing. Everyone waited, hearts pounding. Bravo sat again, quietly, but didn't look away from Ethan. It was as if he were saying, "The job is done." Moments later, the court officer returned, gripping a lab result. His voice was calm but unmistakably clear. The substance has tested positive. It's opium. The words struck like thunder. Turner's eyes went wide. His face drained of color. No rebuttal came. The prosecutor scrambled to respond, voice trembling. In light of this, the initial charges, child abuse and unlawful aggression, are only the beginning. We ask the court to consider new charges, drug possession and distribution. The defense lawyer stood, composed. Thank you, Your Honor. This proves the prosecution pursued the wrong accusation. Bravo's actions were lawful and instrumental in uncovering a far more serious crime. The judge tapped the gavel once more. The court will recess to reassess the charges in full. A hush of relief swept through the courtroom. A few spectators clapped quietly. Bravo turned back to Ethan, tail wagging softly. A silent celebration. Ethan leaned down, wrapped his arm gently around his companion, and whispered, "You did good, my friend. You did real good." The courtroom seemed to hold its breath in that instant, as Sarah, Mr. Turner's wife, stepped onto the witness stand. She wore a simple outfit. Her face was weary, etched with sleepless nights. Her footsteps were soft, but each step carried the weight of quiet determination, a stark contrast to the suffocating silence pressing against the walls of the courtroom. She bowed her head, trembling hands gripping the wooden edge. Then, her voice cracked through the air, hoarse but clear. "I can't stay silent anymore. Michael has been abusing our son." The courtroom erupted in shock. The prosecutor's eyes widened in disbelief. Turner, once composed, commanding, stood frozen. His eyes flickered with panic, then collapsed into a look of anguish as his wife unraveled the truth. For a moment, every emotion in the room surged toward Sarah, but she didn't leave the stand. She was fighting for her child's life. As the court struggled to process the seismic confession, Bravo once again demonstrated his unmatched instinct. When an investigator approached Sarah to check her belongings, Bravo lifted his nose and sniffed, sharply, alert. Then he jumped, planting his front paws on the edge of the chair, stretching his body toward her. From the pocket of Sarah's sweater, a tiny necklace slipped out, clinking to the ground. Its chain was stained with dried blood. The sound echoed like a bell in the hush of the courtroom. All eyes turned, the judge, the attorneys, even the spectators. From the back of the gallery, the boy, the very heart of the trial, stood up, tears welling in his eyes. "That's my necklace! Bravo saved me!" One sentence, one truth. Enough to shatter the veil of deception. The boy ran down the aisle and threw his arms around Bravo's neck, sobbing, unable to wipe away his tears. The judge slammed the gavel with force, his voice deeper now. "We will pause for a moment to process this development." No one moved. No one breathed too loud, afraid to disturb the sacred shift of fate. Then, another gavel strike, and the declaration, based on the sworn testimony of Mrs. Sarah Turner and the physical evidence uncovered by Bravo, this court finds the charges against Mr. Ethan Caldwell to be unfounded. All allegations are hereby dismissed. The clerk's pen scratched swiftly across the page, interrupted only by the quiet exhale of relief that swept through the room. Faces once filled with doubt, now brimmed with admiration. Turner, the father who had so fiercely opposed Ethan, was led away in handcuffs, wrists bound behind his back. The child, safely embraced by child protection officers, was escorted to a safe haven, a place to heal from wounds, both seen and unseen. As the trial closed, the story of Bravo and Ethan spread like wildfire across news sites, social media, and millions of YouTube screens. Clips of Bravo discovering the necklace went viral. People praised his loyalty. They celebrated Ethan. the paralyzed veteran who fought with everything he had to protect a child. Comments poured in, admiration, support, tears. It became a movement. Despite countless offers for interviews, film deals, and books chronicling their dramatic journey, Ethan quietly declined them all. He refused to turn their truth into entertainment. Instead, he partnered with donors and used the flood of donations to create something greater. Paws of Valor, a nonprofit dedicated to training service dogs for veterans with PTSD and individuals with disabilities, helping them reintegrate into society and reclaim their strength. Within a year, Paws of Valor had trained and placed over 30 service dogs with veterans across the country. Men and women who had once been lost, hopeless, now had companions, trusted four-legged friends, attending therapy sessions, aiding mobility, and restoring joy. They shared photos of their dogs wearing vests that read, "Therapy Companion in Progress," at hospitals, recovery centers, and community events. Laughter, wagging tails, and sometimes tears of joy replaced the trauma of war. One golden autumn afternoon, Ethan and Bravo were invited to speak at a local elementary school. The small assembly hall glowed with sunlight from the open doors. Pastel walls and rows of tiny chairs welcomed dozens of curious children. As Ethan shared the story of how he and Bravo saved the boy, the children listened without blinking. Then, the youngest student, wide-eyed and innocent, raised a hand. "Does Bravo know what justice means?" Ethan smiled, ran a hand gently over Bravo's head, then looked back at the children. "No, Bravo doesn't understand abstract words like justice, but he knows how to love. He knows how to protect the vulnerable, and that is everything justice needs." The room filled with applause. The children cheered. Bravo let out a small bark, a soft greeting. Ethan leaned down, wrapped an arm around his old friend, and added, "When we choose love and act for one another, justice will always follow." There they stood, the soldier and the dog, beneath the watchful, hopeful eyes of the next generation, living proof that loyalty and compassion can indeed change the world. Thank you for joining us on the emotional journey of Ethan and Bravo. A bond, invisible, unspoken, was forged through silence, tested by war, and ultimately revealed in the most unexpected way. Their story reminds us that courage doesn't always roar on the battlefield. Sometimes it whispers gently between a man and his four-legged friend. When Bravo used a quiet signal to uncover the truth, the world stopped and listened. If this story touched your heart, inspired you, or renewed your belief in the power of loyalty and love, we invite you to support us. Click like, share this video, and most importantly, subscribe to Paws of Valor Stories. Here, we promise to bring you real stories of wordless friendship, of resilience in the face of adversity, and of the miraculous healing power found in the love between humans and animals. Join our community, where every step, every glance, every gentle touch tells a story of its own. Because sometimes, the quietest companions are the greatest heroes. And just by being there, they make all the difference. Subscribe now and never miss another incredible story.